Well, hello, fellow creeps and mask fanatics. Welcome back to the Mask Fanatic. Dr. Lady here in your face once again. Always nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Tonight's mask happens to be a Don Post Studios. That's right, we're going to go postal, by which I mean Don Postal. Don Post Studios Mummy. Now, a lot of masks were just called Mummy. And to this day, masks continue to be made that are called simply Mummy. This particular mummy, however, is a mummy with a difference, because as you can see, he is both eating and being eaten by a very bright red snake. And what's special about him? Well, let me tell you. I'm glad you asked that question. The mummy seen here is a variation on a very popular and long-standing perennial favorite from Don Post Studios, the old Mummy 5000 BC. Now, the Mummy 5000 BC had been around since the mid to late 70s and looked basically like this, but without the snake and without this slimy green goop. It was just a completely dried out, dusty looking skull with the bandages on it. This variation with the snake, which again was cataloged as simply Mummy, although collectors refer to it as the Snake Mummy or the Mummy with Snake. More specifically, the Mummy W/Snake. It's kind of the common name for it. The Snake Mummy here, the Mummy W Snake, came out in 1983, and it seems to have only been in production for a couple of years, like 83 through 85, and I don't believe it ever made a comeback after that, so it's been a long, long time since this one has actually been in production. Between the two, the original version without the snake and this version with the snake, I would have to say I like the original version a little better, just because one thing that always bothered me a little bit about this version is the nature of that green stuff you see on his jaws there, because apart from that, he looks so completely dried out, so completely devoid of any kind of moisture, and that green stuff looks like it would indeed contain some small amount of moisture, and somehow it's a little bit at odds with the dried out quality of the rest of him, to me, that he has that, because it looks slightly slimy, slightly like it would be, well, you know, a little fresher than the rest of him. The snake is bright red, and in fact it's actually neon fluorescent red, which means it will glow under a black light, which means if you get your hands on one of these that has the red snake done with a fluorescent paint, wow, you're going to look really cool and scary and weird if you come out at people wearing this in a mummy costume and wearing this part of the mummy costume under a black light. It's going to look really cool. But anyway, why is this mask special? This one that was only available for a couple of years and is a variant on a more popular version of the same Don Post mummy character? Well, the thing that's really unique about it is that it appeared briefly in the scene set at Vincent's Drugstore in Haddonfield in the movie Halloween 4, which came out in the late 80s, and early in the movie, Michael Myers, the killer from the Halloween movies. You with me? If you don't know that much, you shouldn't even be watching videos with me in them, I think. Maybe you shouldn't be watching them anyway, but in the movie, Michael Myers steals one of his iconic white William Shatner-y looking masks from a drugstore, and in that drugstore we see some other masks on display. Now, since that time, a number of collectors out there have taken to collecting everything seen in Halloween 4's drugstore, to have a collection like the shelf seen in there with all those different masks on it, and this is one of them. So if you want to have all the masks used in Halloween 4, you'll need a Don Post mummy with the snake. And even though it was only in production for a couple of years and it's been a long time, occasionally they do still turn up. Sometimes you might find a store that has old stock or something like that, if you have privately owned mom and pop kind of costume shops in the part of the planet on which you live. Now, it was believed that only one sculpture was ever used, and there was no variation whatsoever from one copy of this particular mummy to the next. However, careful study of promotional photos at the time revealed that I had too much time on my hands that day. But the other thing it revealed was that there were some subtle differences, which means, like a great many other Don Post masks, more than one mold was used, and in between sometimes they retooled them, retextured them a little. So they all look like 99.9999% like this one, but there are some very small differences, one of which, other than something very extremely minor, like little tiny lines here and there, that's what most of them are. One difference that comes to mind, if you can see the shape of his nose there, his nasal cavity, it's kind of straight up the sides, kind of. On some of these, it was shaped more like a V, okay, or like a capital letter A, I guess I should say. All right. I'm not saying he's a loser or anything, like, you know, no, that wasn't his upside down V, but more pointed, like a triangle. And on this one, they're a little straighter on the sides, and then the point is, you know, is more subtle. But anyway, very, very similar, but there are some tiny little differences from copy to copy just because more than one mold was used. The other differences, really too small to even notice. They all seem to have this crack in the tooth. They all have this little wad of green goop here. Of course, the paint varies a little from copy to copy, but despite the fact that the green never looked quite like it worked with the rest of the sculpture to me, this is still a pretty hot mask. Actually, anything up here in the attic is pretty hot. It's 148 up here right now. Do you know this? It is 148. Trust me, there's a thermometer right over there. It's just out of camera range where you can't see it. Don Post Mummy, aka Snake Mummy, 1983 through 85. Halloween 4.